Hi, I'm Simon King. This is a discussion about soloing phrasing. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a couple of examples, backing tracks, which are included. So do make use of those. We're going to be talking in a sort of broad sense with this stuff. I'm not kind of the kind of person to spoon feed people licks and stuff like that. So I'm just going to be talking about broader concepts and ways in which you can pace yourself during a solo, so you can always end up with something in the tank when you need it, but also your solo is always going to be nicely phrased and engaging for the listener and engaging for you and your bandmates as well. So if we're sort of looking after those things with a big green tick on those, then we're always kind of going to be on track with a sort of desirable outcome. So I think all of the sort of cliched stuff will kind of get out the way to begin with, and that is that it's really good to sort of have a kind of a rough snapshot of the kind of thing that you want to do before you do it. Golfers always talk about kind of visualizing the shot before they take it several times, as a movie in their head, and actually having that kind of pre-playing routine, if you like, is a really useful thing to have as an improviser. So even if it's just a 2-second snapshot of the kind of, you have like an image of Mike Stern in your head, so it's like, oh well, okay, it's like a Mike Stern solo. That is at least it's at least a plan. It's at least something. Now, if you've got a bit more time to think of stuff, you can think about the kind of lengths, the kind of sort of impact you want to make. Do you want to sort of go in hard? Do you want to leave a big impression? Do you want to be very, very tasteful and melodic? All of those kinds of things. These are things that you can sort of get in your mind before you start soloing itself. A lot of those things will depend on the piece, the style of music, the tempo, all of that kind of stuff. They'll depend on the kind of sound of your guitar, the kind of thing that you're going to be playing with. Is it going to be a driven sound, or a clean sound? So those kind of things do follow on from some of the practicalities of the situation you're in. But it's a really good idea to have that solid plan before you just dive into a situation. I think it's sort of not doing yourself a huge amount of favours if you're just kind of just sort of going, right, I'm soloing now, and then bam, just hit a few licks, and then, like the first kind of 16 bars of a solo is really where that's defined. The quality of the solo and the kind of things that you want to say are really defined in that first 16 bars. So it makes sense to have a kind of operating procedure, an SOP, for that thing, and like I say, having a pre-playing routine. I can't say that if I've had a few beers. a pre-playing routine is really important, even if that's down to, like I said, having a few images in your mind of kind of, is it a Wayne Shorter type of solo? Is it a Van Halen type of solo? Is it a Steve Vai type of solo? Is it a Wayne Krantz type of solo? Is it an Alan Holdsworth type of solo? All of these kind of things, you can sort of slot into those modes, like, right, okay, Wayne Krantz, clean sound, bit driven, slightly driven, funky, lots of articulation, right, okay, plan. Okay, so it's going to be a Steve Vai solo. Okay, whammy bar, big drive, lots of kind of zany vibrato, bang, that's a plan. So whether or not they work out is another matter, but having a plan is really important. So, but having kind of virtual flashcards that you can have in your mind that get you in that mode, I think, is a really useful way of doing that. So this is how I'm going to sort of present this. There's not going to be any kind of crazy PDF material supplied with any of this sort of stuff, because this is sort of concepts, wider concepts, rather than actual licks that you should play, because the licks that you should actually play should be your licks, and if you're playing the stuff that you're, designed to play, then it's going to be more authentic and going to be more interesting to listen to. So these just sort of, like I said, sort of standard operating procedures which I like to use, and they'll give you the best chance of success, I guess. So yeah, so going in with a pre-playing routine, a flashcard of someone or a player or a style of music, it can be anything, just a word. So a lot of sports people, they use that kind of thing. They have a trigger word that kind of gets them in that frame of mind and gets them sort of thinking and playing like the way they want to play. And we can use that kind of techniques. We can use those kind of techniques here as well. So if we sort of take this track, I'm going to sort of do several real-time playthroughs of kind of approaches. So this is a backing track based around F minor, A flat minor, and then a C7 altered there. So straight away, our pattern recognition system should be working. So we're thinking, right, how can we sort of elevate this by a solo? How can we kind of do something on top of this that's going to make it better and more engaging to listen to than it already is? All right. Loads of things going on there. We've got a 16th note. But we've also got this kind of thing on the keyboard. We've got this kind of little syncopated thing on the drums. That kind of thing. So we've got, straight away we can sort of pick up on kind of phrasing that we can use there. We can pick up on some of that and try and mirror it and try and sort of dot in and out of it. So possibly this is kind of like I think like actually a good approach for this would be to sort of have some long notes and kind of lots of space to start with, because that calms the whole thing down. So we've got that kind of ability to sort of like ride across all of that intensity that's going on in the backing track. We can sort of calm that down and introduce our own pace. And like phrase repetition and kind of development is important. I like to use kind of big wide gaps and like big intervals, because we've got these sort of chords, these quite contemporary chords here, and one of the approaches would be to kind of use that, you know, sort of big jumps and big kind of arpeggioic jumps to sort of outline those harmonies. Use the register of the guitar as well, you know, you've got everything all the way from down there to down here. Approach notes as well, kind of thing. Notes that work over all of those three chords, so you've got that kind of E flat there. You can sort of dot these bass notes in as well from time to time, especially with that C7 altered at the end. That's quite a tricky one. There's sort of, I like to use shapes with these kind of chords, with minor chords, like F minor. these kind of shapes. Square shapes with minor chords. So we've got that kind of square shape there, and then for the minor chord here, you've got kind of moving up here, so you sort of minimises the amount of kind of movement. So that's just two shapes. So actually, you know, on the quiet, that's quite a difficult change going from F minor to E flat minor 7. But there's sort of there's ways and means with kind of utilising shapes, especially with minor chords. Sort of reduced pentatonic, if you like. And actually, there's lots of common tone. You have these sort of target notes, like the F and like the E flat. And then you can sort of land on that. So with this kind of pre-playing ritual that we were talking about, parts of this would be like, I'm hearing kind of Mike Stern here. This is that kind of idiom. So straight away I know the kind of stylistically the kind of thing I'm going to be going for. Possibly a nice lead tone, an Alan Holdsworth type of lead type of thing also. Also the rhythm part is kind of repeated, it's quite intense. So I would be looking to sort of calm this down a bit to begin with. So standard tools to calming down, soloing calming down tools, long notes, big gaps, wide vibrato, that kind of thing. Strong 3-note phrases that aren't too complex, that just set the tone for the solo. I would pick straight away, like knowing these chords, got F minor, A flat minor, and C is 7th. So E flat is a common tone for all of those. So you've always got that as a kind of banker, and that as a kind of like a landing spot that you can head to if you're in any doubt. So I would sort of build phrases around that. I'd certainly start with that. Lots of long notes to kind of calm that thing. Got kind of lots of 16th note syncopated things, so something like really crotchet based. They're sort of structural and they repeat themselves, they kind of develop the motives. Kind of kind of like after that first 16 bars you can afford to start to open out a little bit, but like always good to have that kind of first 16 bars as a kind of default setting to kind of just introduce yourself, you know, walk into the room and just kind of get everyone's attention and introduce yourself effectively. That's the analogy. Immediately you hear that kind of long note, everyone's like, oh. If you went in there kind of like that, everyone's going to be like, whatever, you know. But if you go in there kind of big gap, big gap, development and another gap, 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 another little gap, and then sort of this is where you can start to introduce things that are more structural, a bit more kind of like your ideas that you want to develop, and kind of, you know, stepping things up a notch. These kind of like these anchor notes that you can sort of sort of phrases that you produce will kind of like, you know, you can define these phrases by the kind of the gaps in between, the way you start the phrases, the way you develop them, and the way that you end them, and then that gap after before you start the next one. Those are the sorts of things that will give that phrase, you know, it kind of frames a picture, if you like. Sort of that's the thing that gives it the impact. Gap, little ornament on the end. A little bit of cheeky chromaticism. Like, you know, if you listen to sort of people like Mike Brecker, Alan Holdsworth, they were masters at kind of phrasing, and it's the way they finished phrases off in a really elegant way that was sort of setting them apart. Those kind of things. So thinking about in those sorts of terms, you know, like you're trying to produce a beautiful melody. You're trying to sort of like draw a line through these changes as well, but kind of like what you're primarily doing is producing a melody that's pleasant to listen to. And then from that point onwards, you can use ornaments, you can use, you know, stylistic things, gaps, that kind of thing, and that will sort of help that sort of build that. It's like, it is really that analogy of having a picture and then putting it in a frame, you know. So if you have a 4 or 5 note phrase that you can build, and then you have that gap that sort of segregates it from the, that kind of thing. So you've got, you know that you're kind of going to be roughly scaling. There's going to be 4 to 5 notes there. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's about 5 notes there as well. So like keep the note number sort of. I don't want to sound like one of those imbeciles that's like, play less notes, man. Just play less notes. That's a load of nonsense. Ignore anyone that says that stuff. But like think about numbers in terms of like. In terms of building, you know, like you want to end up in a situation where you've got gas in the tank and a ceiling level that you can shoot to. Because otherwise, you know, and actually also it sort of sets your confidence in a good place as well. If you're kind of, you know, if you're in a place where you're kind of, you know, feeling solid about the harmony, feeling solid about your kind of picking, all of that kind of stuff. And the way to do that is to do things that are bite-sized and are manageable to begin with, you know, and that will sort of get you in a good place when it comes to. So we'll just try another set of changes now just to sort of move things on a bit. So again, this is a different sort of style. So what I'm noticing straight away is these kind of big descending arpeggios in the keyboard. And what we can do is we can sort of almost go in the opposite way of those. you can sort of go in the opposite way that the chords and arpeggios are going. That's a nice sort of counterpoint thing when you're playing a solo. Other thing I'm noticing, lots of 16th notes things going on here, which we can lock onto later in the piece. There's kind of minor 11 things going on in the. This is the real high spot here. This is when you really need to sort of branch out with that thing, and then this is the sort of bulk of things, if you like. So this is where you can sort of develop your kind of mood. There isn't, like, diatonically, a huge amount of difference between those first two chords, but this one, that one there's a big difference. So let's look at the chords. We've got E minor, and then F over A, and then E minor again, and then E minor, and then A major. So let's try and sort of put some of that together and see how that renders through when we kind of, we can play over these changes. I'm picking out kind of like G to start with. Leave that kind of like time to resonate. And again, I'm kind of using that note as a bit of a counterpoint. There's lots of wide gaps here, lots of arpeggios with big jumps in them. Lots of long notes, nice and legato as well. Use that kind of quarter note. That's the way you kind of introduce groove and intensity. Phrases. Kind of sort of invent that. Increase the intensity. Don't be afraid to use the lower registers as well. These fourth things are good. They work over minor chords really nice. So let's try another piece and see if we can sort of put some of these ideas together. So we'll pick something a bit slower. So straight away you can hear this kind of more of a sort of country bluesy type of feel. I'm thinking more, and there's like there's a big sort of emphasis on the kind of major harmony here as well. So the changes aren't difficult, so you're not going to have to worry about kind of big jumps and chromaticism. But what you are going to have to focus on is being tasteful and kind of fitting in with this rhythm section, because there's quite a lot going on there as well. Got sort of rhythm guitar back there as well. Again, lots of space. Sort of 4-note phrases maximum. the phrase and letting that breathe. Sort of based roughly around C, and I'm still kind of using that kind of, well, I don't know, what we're calling it, 4 or 5 second type of phrases, like little pods of ideas. And then gap. Gap. Kind of using a lot of kind of fourth and lots of kind of double stop. Again, a lot of that stuff is very sort of based around that kind of C major, but kind of reinforcing certain things about it, like the major sixth. Double stopping on those kind of on the major third. You can sort of just generally sort of hint at the kind of it's sort of a major blues in that sense, you know. That's kind of the sort of feel we're going for. Cheeky bends. Make that bend a bit flat. It's not that. That kind of thing. So you're playing it like a singer would sing. That's how I sort of hear that, a country singer. Got those kind of little ornaments there as well. Let's try another different style as well. So this is a bit faster. Got D minor, up a minor third, and down a fourth, and then so it's kind of a modal thing. I'm thinking kind of a Mike Sterney type of thing. straight away what I've done is I've kind of sort of clocked that we've got this big we've got this kind of big syncopated thing going on, so we can kind of ride on top of that. I wouldn't go for a calming approach with this. I would go straight in with a kind of rhythmical sort of development and kind of. Sort of big on the 16th, big on that kind of like rhythmic repeated stuff. So just to sort of just briefly kind of recap, what I'm doing is I'm kind of like, I'm taking a very quick snapshot of what I think the theme of the piece is, and then seeing how I can kind of visualize myself fitting into that. So like I've got, you know, these 4 tracks we've used so far are all completely different, but the approaches are also very different. So it's not like a one size fits all, but like one theme that does develop is like having a very solid theme and an idea before you start, and actually sticking with that, even if it's something like you kind of tenuous, like, you know, you got this kind of one note kind of thing, just like an F repeated. Go with that, lean on that. And then you can sort of develop from that point onwards, but it's like having that idea and just going with it, leaning on it, really sort of, you know, giving yourself the time to develop it, all right? And then kind of, and having that sort of sense of place, you know, like having that kind of like pre-thought about, okay, that's how I would sort of, you know, you kind of get yourself into a shape that's going to fit nicely into what's going on, and add it and elevate it. So again, straight away you hear that, you got that kind of modal thing on the kind of using long notes here wouldn't, I don't know, doesn't have the same sort of. Articulation wise, I'm trying to match the drums and the percussion, really short and kind of. Pin onto that keyboard thing there. This is something I kind of like, you know, it does seem to be a recurring theme, is if you have a note like that, you can redefine it over all of those chords by sort of approaching it from the top and from the bottom and all sort of manner in between. So, you can kind of like, you can sort of approach it from the top and the bottom, but you can use that as the theme going forward, and that sort of builds intensity, and that's what we're kind of looking to do when we're sort of out of that first 16 bars. We're kind of looking to build intensity. You can do that rhythmically and also using these kind of pinned notes, if you like. Let's try out the track. and the sort of like, don't be afraid of playing cliched things, like kind of blues things to finish phrases off is always really. So just to recap with this sort of soloing, so having a pre-playing sort of ritual or routine, or PPR, pre-playing routine, oh my goodness me, pre-playing ritual is a really good idea. So using flashcards of some kind and put on that flashcard either a player or a word or a style of music or an album cover, something that gets you in that mode of thinking in those sorts of terms, and that will immediately get your kind of set you sort of oriented towards the kind of style of things you want in terms of technically, in terms of the kind of chords, the sound that you're going to use, all of that kind of stuff. So that's really important. Secondly, the other thing is to sort of really put the handbrake on your fingers. Use a kind of more vocalized approach, and actually even singing with it when you play is a really useful thing to do because it controls your fingers a bit. It stops your fingers running away from you. So like, and actually during that first 18 or 16 bars, it's really important to kind of maintain that, keep the space, keep those phrases, 4 or 5 notes maximum, 4 or 5 seconds maximum, and then sort of let them breathe and let them sort of gaps resonate in between so that they have more impact. And then that kind of paces you, so it kind of develops a sort of sense of pace and timing for you. And then you're kind of more aware of the sort of space that's ahead of you that's got to be filled. And then it also allows you time to orient in terms of things that might change, or like things that players are doing that catch your interest, that you think, cool, I could actually would be nice to kind of get on top of that, and use that as part of the solo that we're going to do. So kind of being very aware around that first kind of 8 bars of not necessarily in a panic mode of just going in like blindly playing things, but actually having the confidence to play one note and let it breathe, or play 2 or 3 notes and just let that thing breathe. Get oriented, allow yourself the chance to sort of get centered into the harmony and into the rhythm. It's a really important thing to do, and don't worry, because no one's expecting you to play 1,000 notes when you start playing. In fact, the less that you do there, it's going to be more impressive. It's going to make you sound bigger if you're leaving gaps and letting other people kind of sort of like think, okay, cool, that's how I can fit in with that solo and that kind of note, and it allows them the chance to adapt as well. So it's all round a good way of things. So just to recap that, concentrate on 3, 4, 5 note phrases, maximum 3, 4, 5 seconds long. Leave as long as you've played gap after it or thereabouts. So it allows that sort of thing time to resonate and bed in, and then you can carry on and develop that thing. Don't be afraid of this is the next point really, is kind of leaning into ideas, right? Even if it's one note that's repeated and like a rhythmic pattern, really lean into that idea, okay? Go with it, all right? So really have the confidence to just absolutely go with that thing. Whether or not it's successful, I mean, it's time will tell, but like it's far more likely to be successful if you're kind of going in 100% and not kind of giving up on it and fading out into something else. Okay, so that's the other thing, is really sort of go with those ideas. Use all the tools that you've got available to you. If you've got a band playing with you, latch onto what they're doing, latch onto the energy of what they've got. It can be a playful thing, like just copying the snare drum pattern with a single note. And that's something immediately a form of dialogue that you've got going on. So open up your ears and just really sort of like, get a sense of the landscape that's around you. Become better at and you only do this through repetition and kind of focusing on it really, but like recognizing the musical scenario that you've got. Taking 2 or 3 seconds just start the track and go. You've got 9s, you've got kind of close harmony, you've got that big bass drum thing going there. So you can really sit on that. That's what you think. That's immediately the thing that occurs to me is like, right, we need to be right in the pocket on this, So we need to hit the ground, really on the grid with that, no long notes, no kind of like, things that are beyond or outside of the metric. So things that are kind of intense on the grid, and you can pick that up from just listening to that track and going, right, okay, that's what we've got going on around here. So anyway, enjoy playing with these tracks, and we'll see you on the next one.